Hello, and welcome. Why do bad things happen to good people? Now that's a question for the ages, isn't it? I know I wondered for years why bad things continue to happen to God's people, till God revealed it to me. And what I would like to do in this video is share with you what He revealed to me. I want to start with Jesus' ministry when He was on earth. And I believe that Jesus had a twofold ministry when He was on earth. The first part of this ministry was to live the law without fault or blemish, perfectly. You know, Paul says that through Adam's disobedience came separation and death. But through Jesus' obedience to the law came reconciliation and life. You know, and that was the first part of His ministry. But I believe there's another part. And the second part was Jesus came to do away with man's involvement with the administration of God's covenant on earth. I'll give you an example. The Bible says the high priest would go and would slaughter the lamb and then take the blood into the Holy of Holies and sprinkle it on the ark. But in Hebrews it says that Jesus is now our high priest. That's gone, and Jesus now performs those functions. Another example would be the high priest on the 8th day. He would circumcise the males as a sign of this new covenant. But today, the Bible says we have circumcision of the heart. We no longer need that high priest to do that. But there was another aspect of man's involvement that Jesus was particularly irritated at. And that was the Pharisees. And what He was irritated at was the Pharisees took God's commands and they changed them and made them their oral law. And then they told the people, you need to follow our oral law. You know, to be in covenant with God, you need to follow and do what we say. And Jesus came to do away with that. Now, here's what Paul says. Here's what Paul says is important under the New Testament. I've given you the Old Testament. Here's the New Testament. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7:19, circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing, but keeping the commandments of God is what matters. Keeping the commandments of God. Remember the Pharisees, they took and they altered them and told people to follow this. But Paul says, keep those commandments, that's what's important. Now when Jesus was with His disciples at the Last Supper, He poured the wine into the cup and He says, this is my blood. This is my blood for the New Testament. Testament covenant mean the exact same thing. Those words are interchangeable. But He said, this is my blood. This is the enactment of the new covenant. Now this new covenant that I'm talking about is mentioned in Hebrews chapter 8. And it's not a direct quote from Jeremiah 31, but it's real close. And I want to read 4 verses because here's what we need to know. We need to know what went haywire with the first covenant and why does God say there's a new covenant and what does it entail. That is important and we need to know that. I'm just going to read 4 verses. I'm going to start with verse 7. So this is Hebrews chapter 8, verse 7, the new covenant. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. So there was a fault. There was a fault with this first covenant. And God's going to tell us what that fault is as we keep reading. For finding fault with him, He saith, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. I don't have time to do this today, but we are the spiritual house of Israel. And if you just think about it, we have to be. You know, Paul says we're engrafted into the family of God. Well, God's family only has 2 houses, Israel and Judah. There's no Gentiles mentioned here. You have to be a part of that family to be engrafted in. That's another subject for another day. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not. So God is saying that they refused to remain in covenant. Oh, they thought they were in covenant. They thought they were in covenant, just like Christians today think they're in covenant. But because the Pharisees, with sleight of hand, they moved it over here and changed it. And by following the Pharisees, Jesus said, you teach for doctrine. So he was talking to Pharisees. That's almost the only people he was rough with in the Bible. He's teaching them. He says, you teach for doctrine the commandments of men. And not only do you keep yourself out, but you keep all those who hear you out. But people thought they were in covenant. And there's another important thing he says here. He says, and because they would not remain in covenant, because they were either deceived or they willfully did it, whatever, I regarded them not. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about why do bad things happen to good people. God says because they wouldn't remain in covenant. He ignored them. Good things happen to you. Bad things happen to you. I know a lot of Christians say to me, it's just the luck of the draw. Luck is a strange concept for a Christian. God says he ignores you if you refuse to remain in covenant, whether you're deceived or whether you do it willfully. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their minds, and I will write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. God says that if you will be obedient, and if you will remain in his covenant, he will put his laws in your minds, and he will write them on your hearts. He will put them in our minds so that we understand them, the importance of them. And he'll write them on our hearts so that we desire to do them. And if we do that, we will not be ignored. Why do bad things happen to good people? So, Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28 spells out the terms to this contract. A covenant's a contract. That's all it is. If we had a covenant with someone today, we would call it a contract. It's basic stuff. If the first part does what they're supposed to do, and the second part does what they're supposed to do. It's just a contract. And like all contracts, it has terms. And Deuteronomy 28 is the terms to that contract. Now, in Deuteronomy 28, when you read it, remember that he's talking to people here that were under the entire Old Covenant law. But what's Paul say for us? He says the commandments. The commandments are what's important. That's what's different for us. But in Deuteronomy 28, he tells them the promises. If they'll be obedient, he tells them what he'll do. And I'm going to summarize that for you. You should go read it yourself. But I'm going to summarize what I think it says. It says if you'll remain in covenant, he'll take care of your health. He'll take care of your finances. He'll take care of your safety. What else? What else is there other than that? He does not say that you'll never get sick. He does not say you'll be rich and famous. He does not say that you'll never be in danger. What he says is in Isaiah 41:13, he says, I will have your right hand. I will have your right hand through all these things, and I will guide you through them. What kind of life would it be if we knew all the time, everything was just, there would be no excitement. There would be no suspense of life. He said, I came that you have life and have it more abundantly. He will have our right hand. John says, if you fear, love is not perfected, because he's talking about faith. If you fear, you don't have the faith. Love is not perfected in you yet. Now, many say to me, that's the Old Testament. New Testament Christian. I don't go by that. In my opinion, and see if this doesn't make sense to you, in my opinion, the Bible is an instruction book. It's the instruction book of how to have a successful relationship with your Creator. And just like any book, the instructions are in the first part of the book. And with the Bible, the foundational instructions, the schoolmaster, the teacher is in the first part of the book in the Old Testament. How in the world, I've never understood this, how in the world can we hope that we can do things correctly and be in good graces with God if we just throw out the foundational instructions and go straight to the last part of the book and start making it up to whatever feels good, to whatever we like, that's what man-made religion does. Man-made religion goes and makes it palatable so that you'll want to do what they want. It's what the Pharisees did with their oral law. And you can believe this. Man-made religion always does it for the same reasons. For prestige and power and money. So now I need to address the elephant in the room. You know, Jesus told Pilate, he said, I come to demonstrate the truth. You know, through my life, I'm going to demonstrate the truth. And that's what I need to do to you. I need to tell you the truth. You know, and that's going to make a lot of people mad. And I'm sorry for that. Well, actually, I'm not sorry for it. Because it's what needs to be done. Jesus died for it, and I need to make the effort to tell you the truth. Most Christians today tell me, I obey those commandments. You better believe I obey them. I write them on my government buildings, and I have them in my schools, and I obey those commandments, those 10 commandments. But do they really? Do they really? There's one commandment that nearly all, not everyone, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but nearly all Christianity obeys this one commandment. God says in the 4th commandment, remember. Remember, remember, remember. You're likely to forget this. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. But almost all Christians say, no, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that. And that's a shame. That's a shame because God says in Exodus 31:13, He says, surely you'll obey my Sabbath. Because it'll be a sign between me and you throughout your generations. A sign between you and your God. A sign between you and your Creator. Reminds me when Jesus said the Father loves His Son. And He has set His mark upon Him. You know, the Bible says that we don't war against flesh and blood, but against principalities in high places. And when these principalities and powers in high places see God's mark of ownership on you, they know that it's hands off. You can see a demonstration of this in the book of Job. Satan desired to put his hand on Job, but God's mark said, oh no, that one belongs to me. You shall not. God does eventually allow Satan to do that as a test of Job's faith and a demonstration for us. But it tells you that these demons and Satan in these high places, they can't touch you unless God says so. And what are we talking about? We're talking about why do bad things happen to good people. We're talking about if you don't obey, God will ignore you and you won't have the sign. And they can do as they will. Satan controls everything here on earth. You know, the Bible calls him the God of this world. You know, Satan took Jesus up to the highest mountain. He said, showed him all the kingdoms of the world. Not some of them. He showed him all of them, every bit. And he said, all this can be yours. Plus the glory if you'll bow down and worship me. Because it has all been given into my hand, all of it. And I give it to who I will. Satan controls the governments. Satan controls the financial system. Satan controls the churches. He's deep into the churches. It's no great thing. He makes himself into an angel of light. And because he controls the churches, he desires to do the same thing he's always wanted to do. Make you break the commandments one way or another. That's the way it was in the garden, and that's the way it is today. He wants you to break those commandments. Now, I don't have time today to go into the Sabbath. I wish I did, because it's a part of this. There's so many different parts that need to be explained. But in my next video, I'm going to explain the Sabbath. And the Sabbath is not Saturday, and the Sabbath is not Sunday. I know that irritates a lot of people, but that's the truth, and that's what I'm here to tell you is the truth. And I know a lot of people say, oh, my circumstances, you know, I can't, there's no my job, family, obligations, there's no way I can do that. God can change your circumstances. God can do anything, and there's nothing God can't do. If you go to the Father and express your desire to be obedient, you know, the Bible says nothing is hid from Him. Nothing. He knows your heart. He knows if you're one that's going to carry through and be obedient. He knows everything. He can change your circumstances. He can do whatever is required to make it so that you can go against this world, the God of this world, and that you can obey. Jesus said, enter in through the narrow gate, because wide's the gate and broad is the path that leads to destruction. But the narrow gate, it's hard, he says. It's difficult. You're bucking up against this world. But God can make it to where you can do it if that's your desire. He can do anything, and there's nothing he can't do. Go to the Father. Tell him your desire. I hope this helps.